First National Bank of Riverside closed in 2008 during the financial crisis. The building stood empty on Main Street for 16 years. A monument to economic collapse, to failed institutions, to broken promises. The vault door, 3 feet of reinforced steel, remained sealed. Nobody had the combination anymore. The bank's records were lost in bankruptcy proceedings. Inside that vault sat safety deposit boxes. Hundreds of them. Contents unknown. Owners forgotten. But on a freezing January night in 2024, someone broke through the boarded-up entrance and stepped inside. Her name was Dolores Martinez. She was 74 years old. She'd been evicted from her apartment that morning. She had nowhere to go. No family. No friends. $43 in her pocket and a lifetime of belongings in 2 garbage bags. Dolores needed shelter. Needed warmth. Needed somewhere to sleep where she wouldn't freeze to death. The abandoned bank had broken windows but thick walls. It would be warmer than the street. What Dolores found inside that bank wasn't just shelter. It was an unlocked door. A door that should have been sealed forever. The vault door was open. Just a crack. Like someone had left in a hurry and forgotten to spin the lock. And inside that vault, in safety deposit box number 447, Dolores found something that would change everything. Not money. Not gold. Not jewels. But evidence. Evidence of a crime committed 52 years ago. Evidence that had sent an innocent man to prison for life. Evidence that proved Dolores's own father had been framed. And evidence that named the real killer. Who was still alive. Still free. Still unpunished. Stay with me because this is a story about a homeless woman who found justice in the last place anyone would look. Dolores Martinez had lived in the same rent-controlled apartment for 47 years. She'd moved in when she was 27. Fresh out of a bad marriage. Working as a secretary. Trying to rebuild her life. The apartment was small but affordable. She'd raised her daughter there. Lived alone after her daughter moved away. Worked until she retired at 65. And then survived on Social Security. It wasn't much, but the rent control made it possible. Until the building was sold. The new owner wanted to renovate. Convert to luxury condos. Get rid of the old tenants paying 1977 prices. Dolores received an eviction notice. The building was being demolished. She had 60 days to leave. Dolores tried to find another apartment. But on Social Security she couldn't afford market-rate rent in Riverside. Everything was too expensive. She applied for senior housing. The waiting list was 2 years. She asked her daughter for help. Her daughter, Christine, lived 3 states away. Had her own family. Her own problems. Christine said, "Mom, I can't take you in. We don't have space. Can't you figure something out?" Dolores had tried. She'd applied for assistance programs. For subsidies. For emergency housing. But everything had waiting lists. Everything required documentation she'd lost in the chaos of packing. Everything moved too slowly for a woman with 30 days to find somewhere to live. The eviction happened on January 15, 2024. A sheriff's deputy knocked on Dolores's door at 8 a.m. Told her it was time to go. Gave her 2 hours to pack. Dolores filled 2 garbage bags with clothes and essentials. Everything else, her furniture, her books, her photos, 47 years of life, was left behind. The landlord would dispose of it. Dolores walked out of her building at 10 a.m. with 2 bags and nowhere to go. She tried shelters. All full. Winter was the worst time to be homeless. Everyone needed shelter from the cold. She tried churches. They gave her a meal and prayers but no bed. She tried the hospital emergency room. They said she wasn't sick enough to admit. By 8 p.m. Dolores was walking the streets. Exhausted. Freezing. Desperate. That's when she saw First National Bank. She'd walked past it 1,000 times. The building had been abandoned since 2008. 16 years of decay. Windows broken. Door boarded up. But those boards were old. Rotting. Dolores pulled at one. It came away easily. She looked around. The street was empty. Dark. Nobody watching. Dolores squeezed through the gap and entered the bank. Inside was warmer than outside. The building's thick walls blocked the wind. Dolores found the main banking floor. Teller windows still intact. Desks overturned. Papers scattered everywhere. She walked carefully, her flashlight from her phone illuminating dust and debris. She found a back office. A manager's office maybe. With a couch. Old stained but better than concrete. Dolores set down her bags. She would sleep here tonight. Figure out tomorrow when tomorrow came. But Dolores couldn't sleep. It was too quiet. Too strange. He got up and explored. Walked through the bank's offices. Found employee break rooms with ancient coffee makers. Conference rooms with whiteboards still showing notes from 2008. Q3 targets. Mortgage crisis response. Evidence of the panic before closure. And then Dolores found the stairs leading down. To the basement. To the vault. She almost didn't go down. Basements were dangerous. Dark. Easy to get hurt. But curiosity pulled her. She descended the stairs carefully. And at the bottom she found it. The massive vault door. 3 feet thick. Reinforced steel. Built to withstand anything. And it was open. Not wide. Maybe 6 inches. But open. Dolores stared at that door. Banks never left vaults open. Never. This was wrong. But also, Dolores had nothing to lose. She was homeless. Sleeping in an abandoned bank. If there was anything valuable in there, maybe she could use it. Trade it. Sell it. Survive another day. Dolores pulled the vault door. It was heavy but it moved. The door swung open with a groan that echoed through the empty building. And Dolores stepped inside. The vault was smaller than Dolores expected. Maybe 15 feet square. 3 walls lined with safety deposit boxes. Hundreds of them. Different sizes. All locked. All sealed. All forgotten when the bank closed. Dolores walked along the walls, reading numbers. Box 23. Box 147. Box 389. Each one potentially containing something valuable. But all locked. Dolores didn't have keys. Didn't have tools to break them. She was about to leave when she noticed something. One box was open. Not just unlocked. Actually open. The little door hanging loose. Box 447. Dolores walked over. Looked inside. And found a manila envelope. Thick. Yellowed with age. She pulled it out carefully. The envelope wasn't sealed. Dolores opened it. Inside were documents. Legal documents. Court records. Police reports. And photographs. Dolores took everything back upstairs to the office where she'd planned to sleep. She spread the documents on the manager's desk. And started reading. What she found made her hands shake. The documents related to a murder case from 1972. A man named Victor Chen had been killed in an armed robbery at his convenience store. The killer had shot him and taken $300 from the register. Police had arrested a man named Thomas Rodriguez. 23 years old. He lived 2 blocks from the store. Had a record for petty theft. Witnesses placed him near the scene. Rodriguez claimed he was innocent. Said he was home that night. But he had no alibi. No witnesses. The jury convicted him. Life in prison without parole. Rodriguez was sent to Riverside State Prison. He was still there. 52 years later. 75 years old. Imprisoned for a murder these documents suggested he didn't commit. Because in this envelope were police reports that had never been submitted to court. Witness statements that contradicted the official story. And photographs that showed a different suspect. Dolores read through everything. The investigation had been led by Detective Robert Walsh. He'd focused on Rodriguez immediately. Ignored other suspects. Dismissed alibis. Pressured witnesses to identify Rodriguez. One witness, Maria Santos, had initially told police she saw someone else running from the store. A white man in his 30s with a distinctive scar on his left cheek. But in her final statement, the one presented at trial, Maria identified Rodriguez. A Hispanic man in his 20s with no scar. The change was never explained. Another witness, David Kim, Victor Chen's business partner, had told police he knew who killed Victor. That it was someone Victor had been having disputes with. A supplier who Victor owed money to. A man named James Morrison. But David's statement wasn't in the trial record. It had been buried. And James Morrison was never investigated. The photographs in the envelope showed someone Dolores recognized. Because the photos were from Victor Chen's store. Security camera stills from the night of the murder. The timestamp showed 10:47 p.m. The murder happened at 10:51 p.m. The photos showed a man entering the store. White. 30s, with a visible scar on his left cheek. Not Thomas Rodriguez. Someone else. And there was one more document in the envelope. A handwritten note. Dated 1995. 23 years after the murder. The note was from Detective Robert Walsh. Retired by then. The note read, "I made a mistake in 1972. Thomas Rodriguez didn't kill Victor Chin. James Morrison did. But Morrison was my wife's brother. I couldn't let him go to prison. So I framed Rodriguez. I buried the evidence. I pressured witnesses. I ruined an innocent man's life. I'm dying now. Cancer. And I can't die with this on my conscience. But I'm too much of a coward to come forward. So I'm putting this in my safety deposit box. Maybe someday someone will find it. Maybe someday Rodriguez will get justice. I'm sorry." Dolores sat back in the chair. Her mind racing. Detective Walsh had framed Thomas Rodriguez to protect his brother-in-law. Had destroyed evidence. Had coerced witnesses. Had sent an innocent man to prison for life. And Walsh had felt guilty enough to confess, but not guilty enough to actually do anything about it. He'd hidden the confession in a bank vault and died with his secret. Except Walsh hadn't counted on the bank closing. On the vault being sealed. On the confession being trapped for 52 years. Until tonight. Until Dolores. But there was something else in that envelope. Something that made Dolores's heart stop. A newspaper clipping from 1972. About the murder. About the investigation. About the victim's family. Victor Chen was survived by his wife and 2 children. The article named them. Chen's wife, Grace. His son, Peter. His daughter, Dolores. Dolores stared at that name. Dolores Chen. That had been her name. Before she married Martinez. Before the divorce. Before she took back her maiden name. Except she'd taken her mother's maiden name. Rodriguez. Her mother had remarried after Victor's death. Married a man named Carlos Rodriguez. And Dolores had taken Rodriguez as her last name. Not Chin. Because Chin reminded her of her father. The father who'd been murdered when she was 6 years old. Dolores looked at the envelope again. At the evidence. At the confession. Thomas Rodriguez. The man convicted of killing her father. The man who'd spent 52 years in prison. He wasn't just an innocent man. He was her uncle. Her mother Grace's brother. Grace had sworn Thomas was innocent. Had fought for his release. Had visited him in prison every month for 40 years until she died in 2012. Dolores had never believed her mother. Had thought Grace was in denial. Couldn't accept that her brother was a murderer. But Grace had been right. Thomas was innocent. And Dolores had just found the proof. Before we continue with what Dolores does with this evidence, I need you to understand something. This story is about an innocent man who spent 52 years in prison while the real killer lived free. If you believe justice matters even after decades, even after everyone has moved on, hit that subscribe button right now. We tell the stories of wrongful convictions. Of innocent people destroyed by corrupt systems. Your subscription helps us continue. Now let's see what Dolores does next. Dolores didn't sleep that night. She sat in that office reading and rereading the documents. Her father had been murdered by James Morrison. Her uncle Thomas had been framed. Detective Walsh had destroyed both families to protect his brother-in-law. And Dolores had spent 52 years believing her uncle was a killer. She remembered her mother crying, insisting Thomas was innocent, and Dolores telling her to accept reality, to stop visiting him, to move on. Grace had died still fighting for her brother. Still believing. Still loving him despite everyone, including her own daughter, telling her she was wrong. And she'd been right all along. At dawn, Dolores left the bank with the envelope. She went to the public library as soon as it opened. Used a computer to research. Thomas Rodriguez was still alive. Still imprisoned at Riverside State Prison. 75 years old. 52 years inside. Dolores searched for James Morrison. Found an obituary from 1998. He died at 58. Heart attack. Died a free man. Never punished. Never even suspected. Dolores felt rage building. Morrison had murdered her father. Framed her uncle. And died comfortably while Thomas rotted in prison. But Morrison being dead didn't matter. Thomas was still alive. Still innocent. Still deserving justice. Dolores contacted a lawyer. The Innocence Project, an organization that fought wrongful convictions. She sent them everything. Photos of the documents, scans of the confession, copies of the security camera stills. A lawyer named Marcus Williams called her within 3 hours. "Ms. Martinez, where did you get these documents?" Dolores told him the truth. She was homeless. She'd broken into an abandoned bank. Found the vault open. Found safety deposit box 447. Found the confession. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "The fact that you obtained these through trespassing might complicate admissibility. But this is extraordinary evidence. A confession from the lead detective. Security photos never presented at trial. Witness statements that were buried. If this is authentic, and I believe it is, we can get Thomas Rodriguez released." The Innocence Project took the case. They filed a motion for a new trial based on newly discovered evidence. They presented Detective Walsh's confession, the security photos, the altered witness statements. The district attorney fought it initially. Claimed the evidence was suspect because it was found through illegal entry. Claimed Walsh's confession was uncorroborated. Claimed too much time had passed. But Marcus pushed back. He found Maria Santos, the witness who'd changed her statement. She was 89 now, living in a nursing home. When Marcus showed her the documents, she started crying. "Detective Walsh told me if I didn't identify Rodriguez, I'd be charged as an accessory. He said he'd have me deported. I was undocumented then. I was terrified. So I lied. I've carried that guilt for 52 years. David Kim, Victor Chen's business partner, was dead. But his son had his father's papers. David had kept copies of everything, including his original statement naming James Morrison. The statement Walsh had buried. Marcus presented everything to a judge. Argued that Thomas Rodriguez had been denied a fair trial. That exculpatory evidence had been deliberately suppressed. That an innocent man had spent half a century in prison because a detective chose his family over justice. The judge reviewed the evidence for 2 weeks. Then issued a ruling. The conviction was overturned. Thomas Rodriguez would be released immediately. All charges dropped. 52 years too late. But finally, justice. Dolores was there the day Thomas was released. She stood outside Riverside State Prison with reporters and activists and Marcus Williams. And she watched her uncle walk out of that prison. Thomas was 75 years old. He'd been 23 when he went in. He'd spent 52 years, 9 months and 14 days in prison for a murder he didn't commit. He was bent, fragile, his hair white, his face lined, but his eyes were clear. Alive. Marcus introduced Dolores. "Thomas, this is Dolores Martinez. She's the one who found the evidence. She's Grace's daughter. Your niece." Thomas stared at Dolores. "Grace's daughter? Little Dolores? You were just a baby when..." His voice broke. "Your mother. She never stopped believing me. Never stopped visiting. She told me you didn't believe I was innocent. I don't blame you. Nobody believed me." Dolores started crying. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. My mother was right and I didn't believe her. She died still fighting for you and I told her to give up. I was wrong. And I'm so sorry it took 52 years to prove it." Thomas reached out and took Dolores's hand. His grip was weak but steady. "You found the truth. You saved me. That's what matters. Grace would be so proud of you." They stood there, uncle and niece, meeting for the first time as adults. Connected by a murder. By injustice. By 52 years of wrongful imprisonment. And by the evidence Dolores had found in an abandoned bank vault because she'd had nowhere else to sleep. Thomas Rodriguez sued the state. Wrongful conviction. 52 years of life stolen. The case was straightforward. Detective Walsh's confession. The buried evidence. The coerced witnesses. The state settled for $32 million. Not enough. No amount of money could give Thomas back 52 years. But it was acknowledgement. It was recognition that the state had destroyed an innocent man's life. Thomas split the money. Half for himself. A quarter for Marcus Williams and the Innocence Project to continue their work. And a quarter for Dolores. "You saved me," Thomas told her. "This money is yours too." But Dolores didn't want the money. She wanted justice for her father. James Morrison was dead. But there were others involved in the cover-up. Detective Robert Walsh was dead too. died in 2001. But his confession named accomplices. Other detectives who knew about the evidence suppression. Prosecutors who turned a blind eye. Walsh had protected his brother-in-law, but the institutional corruption went deeper. The Innocence Project expanded their investigation. They found 12 other cases where Detective Walsh had been the lead investigator. Where evidence seemed questionable. Where confessions seemed coerced. Where convictions seemed rushed. 8 of those 12 people were still in prison. The project started filing motions. Requesting case reviews. Looking for buried evidence. Looking for more wrongful convictions. They found 3. 3 more innocent people sent to prison by Robert Walsh. 1 had died inside. But 2 were still alive. Still serving time for crimes they didn't commit. The evidence that would have exonerated them had been suppressed. By Walsh. With help from prosecutors who valued conviction rates over justice. All 3 cases were overturned. 2 more innocent people were freed. Dolores attended both releases. Watched them walk out of prison. Watched them reunite with families. Watched them cry and laugh and try to process freedom after decades of wrongful imprisonment. And Dolores thought about how it had all started. With her eviction. With homelessness. With one night in an abandoned bank. With one open vault door. With one safety deposit box. The bank building was purchased by a developer shortly after Thomas's release. The story had made the abandoned bank famous. The bank that freed an innocent man. Dolores was there the day the vault was finally emptied. Crews opened all the other safety deposit boxes. Most contained nothing. Papers destroyed by time. Jewelry tarnished beyond value. Cash that was worthless now. But 3 boxes contained evidence. Evidence of other crimes. Other secrets. Other truths buried and forgotten. 1 box held documents proving corporate fraud from the 1990s. Another held evidence of embezzlement. The third held a confession to a hit-and-run from 1985 that had killed a child. The driver had never been caught. Now they were identified. Justice delayed. But not denied. Thomas Rodriguez became an advocate for the wrongfully convicted. He spoke at conferences. Wrote op-eds. Testified before legislative committees. He shared his story. 52 years stolen because one detective valued family over truth. He pushed for reforms. Better evidence preservation. Mandatory disclosure. Penalties for prosecutors who suppress exculpatory evidence. Compensation for the wrongfully convicted. He worked with the Innocence Project. Helped other prisoners. Other families. Other people fighting impossible fights against corrupt systems. And he always gave credit to Dolores. She was homeless. She was desperate. She could have ignored what she found. Could have walked away. But she didn't. She chose justice over survival. That takes courage most people don't have. Dolores insisted she wasn't courageous. She'd just been in the right place at the right time. Or wrong place depending on how you looked at it. But Thomas disagreed. You were homeless and you thought about me instead of yourself. You fought for a man you'd spent your whole life thinking was a killer. You chose truth over the comfort of the lie you'd believed. That's courage. Dolores and Thomas became close. He was her only living family. Her mother Grace was gone. Her daughter Christine had cut contact years ago. Thomas was it. And Thomas had no one else either. Prison had taken everything. His friends from before were dead or moved on. His youth was gone. He was 75 and starting over with nothing but money and vindication. Dolores and Thomas decided to start over together. Thomas used his settlement to buy a house. A small house in Riverside with 2 bedrooms. One for him. One for Dolores. Your family, he told her. You saved my life. Now let me return the favor. Dolores moved in. For the first time in a year she had a home. A real home. With family. With someone who cared. It wasn't charity. Thomas needed her as much as she needed him. 52 years in prison left scars. Thomas had nightmares. Panic attacks. Couldn't handle crowds. Didn't understand modern technology. Dolores helped him navigate. Taught him to use a smartphone. Helped him manage money. Went with him to doctor's appointments. And Thomas gave Dolores purpose. After her eviction she'd felt worthless. Invisible. But Thomas saw her. Valued her. Made her feel like she mattered. They created the Grace Rodriguez Foundation together. Named after Dolores's mother. Thomas's sister. The woman who'd never stopped believing. The foundation helped two groups, the wrongfully convicted and the elderly homeless. The two populations Thomas and Dolores represented. The foundation funded legal fees for people fighting wrongful convictions, provided housing assistance for elderly people facing eviction, offered support services for people released from prison after long sentences. It was their way of making sure what happened to them didn't happen to others, of turning their pain into purpose. The foundation helped 63 people in its first 2 years. 31 facing eviction stayed in their homes. 24 wrongfully convicted people got legal representation. 8 were freed. Thomas and Dolores attended every release, every reunion, every moment of joy that came from their tragedy. They spoke regularly about their story. At churches, at schools, at legal conferences, at homeless shelters. They told the truth about wrongful convictions, about homelessness, about systemic failures, about finding justice in unexpected places. And they always ended the same way. Truth doesn't expire. Evidence doesn't decay. Justice might be delayed, but it's never too late. Keep searching. Keep fighting. Keep believing. Because sometimes, truth is sitting in a vault waiting for someone desperate enough to look. Dolores reconnected with her daughter Christine. It took time. Christine had cut contact because Dolores had been difficult about money. Always asking for help. Always struggling. But when Christine saw the news about her mother finding the evidence that freed Thomas, she reached out. "Mom, I had no idea. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you." Dolores could have been bitter. Could have held a grudge. But she chose forgiveness. "You have your own life. I understand. But I'm here now. And I'd like to be part of yours again." Christine and her family visited regularly. Dolores's grandchildren, now teenagers, loved hearing the story. "Grandma is famous," they said. "She's a hero." Dolores always corrected them. "I'm not a hero. I just found an envelope. Your Uncle Thomas is the hero. He survived 52 years of hell and came out the other side still believing in justice." Thomas struggled with freedom. How could he not? He'd gone in at 23. Come out at 75. The world had changed completely. Technology. COVID. Everything. He'd never used a computer before 2024. Had never seen the internet. Cell phones. Social media. The modern world was alien. But Dolores helped him adapt. Patiently. Finally. The way Grace would have. Thomas often talked about Grace. About her visits to prison. About how she'd never given up. About how she died believing in his innocence when everyone else thought she was delusional. "Your mother was the strongest person I ever knew," Thomas told Dolores. "She loved you even though you didn't believe her. She never blamed you. She just hoped someday you'd understand. And now you do." Dolores visited her mother's grave weekly. Brought flowers. Told Grace everything. About finding the evidence. About freeing Thomas. About the foundation. About Christine. About finally understanding. "You were right, Mom. About everything. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I'm sorry I wasted years we could have had together. But I'm living the way you wanted. Fighting for justice. Taking care of Thomas. Being the daughter you deserved." Dolores often wondered what her life would have been if she hadn't been evicted. If she hadn't been homeless. If she hadn't broken into that bank. Thomas would still be in prison. The truth would still be buried. Justice would still be denied. Her eviction, the worst thing that had ever happened to her, had led to the best thing she'd ever done. Not for herself, but for Thomas. For her mother. For justice. Sometimes Dolores thought the worst moments lead to the most important ones. Thomas Rodriguez is 79 now. 4 years free. It's not enough. He should have had 56 years free. Should have had a life. A career. A family. But he has 4 years. And he's determined to make them count. He speaks at every event he's invited to. Travels despite his age. Tells his story until his voice gives out. Because every person he reaches might be someone who can prevent the next wrongful conviction. Who can question evidence. Who can demand accountability. Who can save someone before they lose 52 years. Dolores is 78 now. She lives in the house with Thomas. Manages the foundation. Speaks about homelessness. About elderly poverty. About how close everyone is to losing everything. About how dignity and purpose can be found in the darkest places. About how one night in an abandoned bank changed 2 lives and freed an innocent man. The First National Bank building is now luxury condos. Expensive. Exclusive. The developers wanted to erase the history. Wanted to pretend the building had always been prime real estate. But the city wouldn't let them. A historical marker was placed outside. On this site in January 2024, Dolores Martinez discovered evidence in an abandoned bank vault that freed Thomas Rodriguez after 52 years of wrongful imprisonment. This building stands as a reminder that truth can be found in unexpected places, and that justice, though delayed, should never be denied. Dolores and Thomas attended the marker's unveiling. They stood in front of the building where everything changed. Where truth had waited 52 years for someone desperate enough to look. Where a homeless woman had saved an innocent man. Where justice had finally come. The safety deposit box number 447 is in a museum now. The Innocence Project's Museum of Wrongful Convictions. Next to it is Detective Walsh's confession, the security photos, the witness statements, and a photo of Thomas walking out of prison with Dolores by his side. Thousands of people visit every year. Students, lawyers, activists, regular people trying to understand how the justice system can fail so catastrophically. And they learn about Dolores, about how homelessness led to justice, about how desperation led to truth, about how the worst night of her life became the best thing she ever did. The exhibit ends with a question. What evidence is waiting to be found? What truths are buried? What innocent people are suffering while evidence sits in abandoned buildings, sealed files, forgotten storage units? Will you be the one to look? Dolores and Thomas received the Presidential Medal of Freedom last year. For their work on criminal justice reform and for their dedication to the wrongfully convicted. They accepted together, hand in hand, uncle and niece, connected by murder and injustice and 52 years of wrongful imprisonment and one night in an abandoned bank. In their acceptance speech, Thomas spoke first. 52 years ago, a detective destroyed my life to protect his brother-in-law. 4 years ago, my niece saved my life because she had nowhere to sleep. I spent half a century in prison for a murder I didn't commit. But I'm standing here today because Dolores chose truth over survival. Chose justice over safety. Chose to help a man she'd been taught to hate. That's courage. That's heroism. And that's what will change the world. Then Dolores spoke. I'm not a hero. I was homeless and desperate and I broke into a bank because I was freezing. I found evidence because a vault door was accidentally left open. I could have ignored it. Could have walked away. But my mother spent 40 years fighting for Thomas. Believing in him when no one else did. She died still fighting. I couldn't let her fight be for nothing. So I finished what she started. If there's any hero in this story, it's Grace Rodriguez. The mother who never stopped believing. The sister who never abandoned her brother. The woman who knew truth when everyone else believed lies. This medal belongs to her. Thomas and Dolores stood together holding a photograph of Grace. Smiling through tears. Knowing that somewhere Grace was smiling too. Her brother was free. Her daughter had found the truth. Justice had finally come. 52 years late. But it had come. Evicted and homeless, Dolores Martinez slept in an abandoned bank. She was 74 years old. Had nowhere to go. No family who cared. $43 to her name. The worst night of her life. The moment she thought she'd lost everything. But what she found in that bank vault changed everything. Not for her. For her uncle Thomas. For the wrongfully convicted. For justice itself. She found evidence that had been buried for 52 years. Evidence that proved an innocent man had been framed. Evidence that freed him. Evidence that exposed corruption. Evidence that changed laws. All because one desperate woman looked in a place no one else had thought to search. Evicted and homeless, old woman slept in abandoned bank. What she found in vault changed all. That's the headline. But the real story is about justice delayed but not denied. About truth that waits decades to be discovered. About evidence hidden but not destroyed. About a woman who chose to act when it would have been easier to ignore. About an uncle and niece reconnected by tragedy. About a mother who was right all along. About 52 years of wrongful imprisonment finally ended. About making the worst moment of your life into the most important. Dolores Martinez had nothing that night. But she found everything that mattered. Not money, not treasure, but truth. And truth set a man free. Thank you for staying with me through Dolores and Thomas's entire story. This one was about wrongful conviction, about corrupt detectives who frame innocent people, about evidence hidden for decades, about a homeless woman who found justice when she was just looking for shelter. If this story made you think about the innocent people still in prison, about the evidence that might be sitting in forgotten places, about the truth waiting to be found, I need you to do something right now. Subscribe to this channel. We tell the stories of wrongful convictions, of justice delayed, of truth discovered in unexpected places. Hit that notification bell. Like this video. Share it with anyone who cares about criminal justice reform, about the wrongfully convicted, about the work of the Innocence Project. Leave a comment. Do you believe justice can come after 52 years? Do you think evidence should have expiration dates? Have you ever found something that changed everything? These conversations matter. If you know someone who was wrongfully convicted, if you're fighting for justice, if you have evidence of a crime, come forward. Contact the Innocence Project. Contact journalists. Contact lawyers. Don't let truth stay buried. Don't let innocent people suffer because evidence is hidden. Visit the Innocence Project website. Donate if you can. They're freeing innocent people every day. Volunteer if you're able. Spread awareness. Because right now there are people in prison for crimes they didn't commit. And the evidence that could free them might be sitting in an abandoned building. In a storage unit. In a safety deposit box. In a file cabinet. Waiting for someone to look. Thank you for being part of this community. Until next time, remember, truth doesn't expire. Evidence doesn't decay. Justice might be delayed, but it's never too late. Keep searching. Keep fighting. Keep believing. Because sometimes freedom is hiding in the last place anyone thought to look. Rest in peace, Grace Rodriguez. You were right. Your brother was innocent. Your daughter found the proof. Justice finally came. 52 years late. But it came. And Thomas is free because you never stopped believing. Welcome home, Thomas Rodriguez. 52 years stolen. But you survived. You're free. And you're using your freedom to save others. That's not just survival. That's triumph. And to Dolores Martinez, you weren't looking for justice that night. You were looking for shelter. But you found both. And in doing so, you saved a man's life. Your mother would be so proud. We all are. Subscribe. Share. Search. And never stop believing that truth matters. Because it does. Always.